What's up, guys? Hope you're having a good week. I'm Justin Davis. Today, guess what, you guys? We have an awesome freestyle quad here, and one of the freestyle quads that you probably haven't heard of because this one is sort of under the radar, and Banggood told me they were going to send it to me. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. It's a freestyle quad. I'll check it out. The specs, they look actually really awesome, and I didn't pay attention to the specs at first until I got it, and then I started looking over and I was like, oh wow, this is actually some really good stuff on here. Judging by the looks of it, it's kind of an old school type of design on the frame, unibody on the bottom, two side plates, super easy to get to the stack in the middle, and sort of a almost vertical mount for the antenna in the back. Not a big turn on feature for me, but when I flew this quad, it blew my mind. And I think it's partially because of the power to weight ratio with the power system on board, just like really giving me the ultimate punch for freestyle that I'm looking for. And if you fly it without a GoPro on there, it will be an amazing experience for you. Just show the guys your DVR. You can put a GoPro on the top. It does have a flat rail up top, and it has an easy spot to stick a strap under. You could make a TPU couch up here, or you could do a little piece of foam actually with the GoPro Hero 7 and just a strap around it, and you'll get amazing hyperflow video, hyper smooth. So this quad is absolutely worth the money. They threw in a lot of fairly expensive components on here. We've got a CADX camera, and I'm going to get really deep into that after the flight review, but this one was a surprise. So definitely worth the money, and it flies 5 stars out of 5 right away before I even get into the review. This one is one that more people should probably know about, especially, in my opinion, the new guys getting into it, mainly because it flies great out of the box. Did not need a PID tune. You don't have to. All you have to really do is hook it up to Betaflight, set up your switches, and the ultimately, I think, greatest thing about this one is the fact that you can get to everything super quick to work on your stack. If you're a new guy, you can just get right to this, and all the soldering on this one also looks great. So the build quality's there, and the components are top shelf components on here. So let's go ahead and take this baby outside, and let me show you what this Z4 Freestyle Quad can do. All right, guys, let's rip. We'll come back to the bench and talk about it.
Hey, West Coast! West Coast! Hey, West Coast! Hey, hey! Hey!
like a couple pieces of the LA Weekly to wipe his ass with.
All right, guys, welcome back from the flight test. What did you think about the Aurora RC Z4 Freestyle Quad? It's a ripper, right? I think this quad has amazing capability, super power to weight ratio. It flies like a Ferrari in the mountains, going 95 miles per hour with confidence through the turns. It has an amazing yaw snap, meaning when I really crank on my yaw on a horizontal track and I boost out with the throttle back the other direction. That's what I do a lot of times to try to see if I can trip up a flight controller and see if I can get that flight controller to give me wobble or any prop wash if it's going to have it. I'm also testing the new T-Motor freestyle props, so you guys can try to check those out at the link below. I've got some color variation going on here with those props. They do come all color, one color inside a pack of 4 decent props, and also another sort of new school sort of thin core, smooth tapered tip on the outside, and a very low pitch prop. So a fairly efficient and quiet and beautiful sounding prop when you do spool up. It also has a F4 flight controller on here, which is very standard with Betaflight on board. OSD. It has a 35 amp 4-in-1 ESC, and that's by Aurora RC. You might be able to run that up to 5S possibly, but I would stick with 4S because it actually got a really great flight time on a 4S battery, getting me up to like 4 minutes on a flight. You could easily probably get 4.5 minutes if you just cruise and take it easy. And again, I smoked a battery the day that I flew this. One of the GMB batteries, my GMB 4S 1300, didn't survive, and this one did. But I really put full, I mean, at 90 to 100% throttle a lot of times in some of the maneuvers that I'm doing with these quads. So again, the RDQ series 4S 1300s, top notch for aggressive freestyle. But what one of my favorite components on this quad is, let me turn this thing sideways and show you, is the Rush Tank VTX on here. This is a bad boy for freestyle because it's up to 800 milliwatt. If you want to really crank it and go way out there, you could go 3 miles out or more on 800 milliwatt. I've talked to people about this before. You have amazing penetration on 800 milliwatt. That's the beauty of that. If you're flying with other people, they might be like, hey man, please turn it down a little bit. You're blowing me out over here, because you have so much power with this VTX that you could probably fly behind a building and still get transmission back to your goggles around hard surfaces. But you have 2 buttons on the side right here. That's for changing the bands and channels and the power output. But the cool thing is you have TBS smart audio on board as well, so you can just go in your sticks. You can push to the left with your throttle stick and up with your pitch all the way up to the top, and you can access those menus and you can change the power bands and channels and stuff on that VTX. But it has a lot of features also that are cool for racers, like pit mode. You can change it into pit mode and you can fiddle around with your channels and bands, and then you can go back to 25 milliwatt if you're racing multi-GP, which is cool. You can also expect that this VTX is not going to fry on you on the bench. It does have some pretty cool like voltage protection in it, and it also has like 6 layers of waterproofing. It has 6 layers of PCB after the waterproofing work on here, it says. So a very moisture proof VTX, which I think is great. And probably one of the coolest things about this VTX is that if you wanted to pull this off and put it on another rig that was running 6S, you can run this VTX all the way up to 25 volt. It does handle 2 to 6S LiPo for the input voltage, which is pretty crazy. It has 48 channels. Like I said, you can go from 25 milliwatt to 200 to 500, all the way up to 800. And it has a video format of PAL and NTSC. It also has an MMCX connector on the back of it where this guy plugs into. So it's super cool. There's a little wire going down and plugs in. You also have some LEDs on the back, and the guys at the field were commenting how bright this was. We've got 4mm unibody bottom plate, which does look like some pretty nice 3K carbon on here. You've got braided covering over top of the motor wires, and you want to use a zip tie to zip tie these down. And in the very front of the quad, underneath that Cadex camera. And I haven't been seeing a lot of these lately. They've been making us add them ourselves. There is a square full-size buzzer under there, so you can add your own buzzer on a switch, which is nice. Another detail that I noticed about this quad is look at the ESC tabs. I have seen some slackness lately in QC where they are soldering to the outside, bringing the motor wires on the outside, but these guys are actually soldering them underneath and tucking them in. So that's good news for you guys. Also, I think this frame, it also has 4 standoffs sandwiching in those 2 side plates. Those are 3mm 3K carbon fiber. And this is so cool because if you are new, it's so easy to get to this stack and work on this quad because there's 4 bolts on the bottom holding that top plate on, and everything down here is recessed hardware, so it's all flat on the bottom. Your battery's not going to get chewed up by the hardware, which is really nice. The only crap thing that I see about this, probably this whole quad, is the battery strap. This is a piece of trash. Get rid of this. I'm not sure why these companies even still supply us with these, because these are total trash. Just get rid of this, and also put yourself a nice piece of Velcro down here to cover this up, and you'll have a nice experience. But out on the outside as well, you have sort of silver aluminum hardware going through the frame where the motor mounts. Make sure you remove those, put a little bit of Loctite on each bolt, and screw them back in. And where you're getting the power from on this quad is the DYS 2306 motors. They are 2500 kV, which I felt like was pretty high for this particular setup. A lot of times when I have a 2306, I'm like, oh god, here we go, here's a battery eater, this is going to be a battery puff motor. Even some of the 2400s out there have smoked some of my batteries, and that's from me getting on the throttle. I'm not saying it's going to happen to you. One thing that I do like about these motors is that they're not doing that. They're not smoking my batteries. I had one GMB get pissed because I flew it down way too low, and I was really pushing it hard. But I like the power and response out of these motors. I think that they're going to be fairly cheap to replace if you have to. DYS is not super expensive. And another thing that's cool about these motors is that they're all sort of clockwise threaded lock nuts on top of these props, so you don't have to go and mess around with changing your prop nut wrench around every time you want to take off a prop nut. So it's nice that they're all clockwise nuts. And this little guy right here comes along in the kit, and if you put it face down like that, that is for going clockwise, for tightening the motors up. And if you flip it over with the logo up, that is going to turn it left to take off the prop nuts. So this is a cool little tool that I haven't used before, but actually it's quite nice to have this in my box. You can see there's little rotation icons right here on the top and bottom part, and that's pretty cool. You can see this one is only turning one way and this one's turning the other. That's a pretty neat little tool. Now, another thing that makes me happy about this quad is the Cadex camera on board. Whenever I see a Cadex camera lately, I'm like, oh yay, now I'm going to have a good experience with the camera. And I was talking to a guy the other day at the field about this camera. If you're in the Pacific Northwest or somewhere where it is a little bit cloudy, everything still looks pretty bright with these cameras, and the colors have full saturation. And if I think back like 4 years ago when I was using some of the immersion RC cameras, they they kind of suck. It left a lot of, you'd fly above the trees and look back down at the ground and everything would be black below the tree line. So kind of an annoying feature of some of the older cameras. It didn't handle light to dark very well, but this camera, I believe it has around a 6 millisecond delay on it. It is super fast transition between light and dark. It has a really nice lens on here. It also has 1200 TVL, so yeah, and it's a CMOS sensor inside. It has a 1/2 by 8 inch sensor. It is a Starvis XMOS sensor, and it's that turbo lens on there, the turbo eye lens that Cadex is pretty famous for, and it has super WDR on here. So I think that's why that you have that super bright color. Even on the super sunny days, this camera looks flawless. So I'm always excited to see that. And I might have said that this was the S1 before, but it is not the S1. It is the SDR2 Plus camera. Also has a 165 degree field of view on board. So a super wide view. It's also switchable between 4:3 and 16:9. A very, very nice camera of choice. But also look at this, the frame sticks out above. And what I haven't seen before on a lot of bind and fly quads is they actually use the mount, and they put the camera all the way at the bottom here. And what that does is it protects this bottom chip in a forward crash, which is really nice because this front part has had damage before. I have broken these chips in frontal crashes. They also have another crossbar down here, and they have 4 of them in total across this top plate. 1 down bottom, 3 up top. Pretty sweet. And I have my receiver. It's an XM Plus down there sitting on top of the VTX, and that's where it came. It was already wired up, and all I had to do was pretty much just bind it up to my Taranis, stick up my antennas, and go. Kind of a sloppy job with my antennas, I know, but I ran out of heat shrink at the field, and I set this one up at the field to fly for you guys and test. It also has a wire inside there that's hiding. It is an extra harness wire, so if you have to hook up another receiver, this is cool. So you see this white plug in here? This XM Plus is plugged into a harness back here. So if this one went bad, you just snip this off and solder it over to another receiver. Kind of a plug and play type deal. If you got another receiver and it had this plug, you could just plug in another receiver if you have another one laying around. But super cool that they did that, because I haven't seen that. It's usually soldered straight to the flight controller. So it also comes with this kind of printout manual, and it does say that you have support for S-Bus, DSM2, and DSMX, iBus as well. It's going to go in on UART3. If you're flying FlySky, that's pretty important for you. It has that beta flight setup right here. It has a picture of which UART you should have checked for 0RX right here. For TBS Smart Audio, it's selected on UART2, and this baby has like 6 UARTs on board, so go crazy. It also has a barometer on there as well, so maybe you could add GPS a little bit later if you want to, but I felt like there was a lot of options for it. It also supports the AFHDS2A receiver for you FlySky guys as well, and that's that iBus binding protocol setup. And we have schematic for the flight controller, which is super nice, full color right here. Tells you where everything goes and what everything is. iBus, S-Bus, DSM, X, where the rush connects to, and I think it's a pretty decent in-depth manual here. You have all your information on your cadex here. They included all the information you need. Smart audio information, your frequency table, what your LEDs on your tank VTX do. Yeah, so this is a pretty thorough manual, and it's full color. Kind of a nicer looking manual than I've seen in the past. You also get 2 sets of Gemfan 5043 props in here. So those are 5x4s, and I did test these, but these are a little wider cord than I would normally fly. This is a good boost prop, because look how much fatter in the center this prop is than my other props that I'm using. And the secret about this is that this still gives me plenty of power for these T-motor props, versus this Wind Dancer is just a little bit wider cord. It's just going to suck battery more. It's going to give me more punch, but it's going to drain my battery faster. So I'm getting longer flight time and a really smooth, responsive prop out of these thinner cord props. So you can use these for flying. They will be absolutely fine. They won't give you any jello. It'll look great. You'll get plenty of punch out. I'm not saying this is a bad prop, but not really my prop of choice. Also in the bag, you get a cadex camera control unit for the OSD. There is another harness behind the camera that you can plug this into. It's a little joystick, and this will get you into the cadex menus. You can change your lightness, darkness, and brightness and contrast, color saturation, WDR, all that cool stuff. You get some extra hardware in here, which I think is really cool, and you get what looks to be like an extra VTX harness here. So with all 3 of your your signal 5 volt and your ground wire there. This must be your TBS smart audio wire. And that's kind of nice they have that. Also, I have to say that this flight controller, by the way, it also runs a little bit higher voltage for running output to your camera and your VTX, so you don't have any problems. Some of the other ones out there output like 5 volt, but this one actually outputs like 7 to 9 volt, if I believe I remember correctly in the specs. So that's a good thing for not having any type of brownout while you're flying this quad. So to summarize everything we've been talking about here, I think you can plainly see that there are some really good components on here. You have a ton of UARTs and options. You have a great camera. You have a nice VTX on here. Great motors that don't suck the batteries down and kill batteries like a lot of heavy freestyle power setups do. And you have a really strong and thick, durable, crash-tested unibody bottom plate, which actually held up really well. I was surprised that I didn't break something on the crash that I had with it. It is a very good flying quad, super fast, and it just handles extremely well, like a Ferrari. So I really enjoyed flying this one, and I think it's one of the better flying freestyle quads that Banggood has right now. If you're looking for maybe your first 5-inch quad, this would be a bomber tough one, and one that's going to fly like a Ferrari that's just not known by a lot of people. I think the Z4 is an absolute blast to fly. I love it, and if I could keep this one right next to me and fly this one all summer, I would, because it is an absolute 5-star ripper. But I appreciate you guys watching my review on this one. You guys are safe to buy this one. I think it is a beast, and probably one of the best Aurora RC quads in years. I'm saying years. One of the best Aurora RC quads in years. In times past, Aurora has not impressed me, but everyone seems to be stepping up the game with the components on board, and they're really trying to push their quality control up a lot for you guys. So I think this is kind of a good step for the next direction of Aurora RC. Very, very good quad. But thanks again for watching my reviews, guys. I appreciate it. If you want to support me on Patreon for more honest reviews and flight tests, I would appreciate that, as always. I'm Justin Davis, guys. Take care. I'll see you on the next one.